Yugoslavia had become expendable. International loans were called in, causing triple-digit inflation. The federal government was forced to require austerity measures from the different republics.
Particularly those requirements led Slovenia as a republic and eventually other republics to rebel against what was being called economic reform in the constitutional level.
Any American efforts to preserve Yugoslavia would also put Washington on a collision course with Germany, when German leaders were enjoying their first taste of real political power since World War II. Moreover, U.S. President George Bush had declared a special relationship with Germany, the kind America used to have with England.
The United States thought that Germany would have to be largely responsible for the incorporation of Eastern Europe and Central Europe into the West, because Germany had a national interest, it was its neighbor, its periphery, and it was financially the most powerful country in Europe and had the resources to do it.
In the post-Cold War period, Germany wanted, once again, the evidence is very clear, to recolonize Yugoslavia, to recolonize the Balkans. And the United States tied itself to German policy through its need of German power and influence in stabilizing Eastern Europe, Western Europe, through the exercise of dominion via the European Community, now the European Union, and potentially, eventually, in the lands of the former Soviet Union. The problem was that there was one very important country standing in the way of this, and that was Yugoslavia.
While citizens of Croatia were initially divided over whether to remain in Yugoslavia, the separatists were led by the most extreme elements, remnants of the pro-Nazi Ustashi. As the New York Times columnist A.M. Rosenthal would write, in World War II, Hitler had no executioners more willing, no ally more passionate than the fascists of Croatia. They are returning from 50 years ago from what should have been their eternal grave, the defeat of Nazi Germany. Adolf Hitler considered Yugoslavia to be an artificial creation of the hated Versailles Treaty, which ended World War I. To break it up, he set up a puppet state, an enlarged Croatia, which also included Bosnia-Herzegovina. As its leader, he appointed the fanatical Croat Ustashi Ante Pavelić. Pavelić had helped plot the assassination of King Alexander, Yugoslavia's first constitutional monarch, in Marseille, France in 1934.
And it was the Germans, the German Nazis, who picked out this dreadful Ustashi leader who had made quite clear that he favored Hitler's solution to be applied, which his final solution for the Jews he wanted to apply to the Serbs. He made no secret of it.
Simon Wiesenthal, who tracked Ustashi fugitives for decades, along with other Nazi war criminals, told an interviewer,
I must admit I am obsessed by the criminal character of the independent state of Croatia. Even the Germans were appalled by the crimes committed in it.
How many men, women, and children died there? Hitler's special envoy to the Balkans, Hermann Neubacher, wrote, leaders of the Ustashi boast that they have slaughtered 1 million Orthodox Serbs. On the basis of official German reports, I estimate the number to be 750,000. Most of these Serbian civilians perished in the notorious Croatian death camp Jasenovac, which straddled the Sava River between Croatia and Bosnia. The extermination of Serbs, Jews, and Gypsies in Sarajevo was the task of top Muslim leaders who, with few exceptions, collaborated with Hitler and the Croatians.
There was in occupied Bosnia, also under German patronage, a strong Muslim wing which was very anti-Western. It was represented internationally by the Mufti of Jerusalem. You heard of his viciously anti-Western views, and he was brought to Sarajevo and mobbed by enthusiastic crowds.
After the war ended, Croatia and Bosnia were never denazified. Not only were there no apologies to the Serbs, Jews, and Gypsies, but attitudes remained frozen under the surface of Tito's official policy of socialist fraternity amongst peoples. Following the death of Yugoslavia's longtime leader, Tito, in 1980, right-wing émigré organizations took out an advertisement on the opinion page of the New York Times, stating that Yugoslavia would not survive, and offering a map which included all of Bosnia as part of Croatia. It was a map nearly identical to the Nazi-created independent state of Croatia. By 1990, as communism was collapsing in Eastern Europe, Croatian separatists pinned their hopes on a former communist general named Franjo Tuđman, who had been jailed for excessive nationalism by Tito in the 1970s.
You know, I met him very soon after he came out of communist jail, while Tito was still alive. He had then championed the racialist nationalist form of nationalism. And when he came out of prison, instead of doing what you would think a dissident would do and say, to hell with the communists, he said, oh, well, it has nothing to do with the regime. It's those horrible Serbs who are oppressing us, and the Serbs are responsible for everything, and the Serbs are guilty, and the Serbs have done it all.
Tuđman received important help from outside of Croatia in his rise to power.
The German Secret Service was enormously active in Croatia and in all of Yugoslavia, trying in the 80s to build bridges between what were called the national communists, Stipe Mesić, Franjo Tuđman, in Yugoslavia, and the Ustasha revanchist organizations which lived in the diaspora of Croatia, that is to say, all of the people of weight and influence who had fled the former Nazi puppet state in 1945.
Tuđman found it useful to come to terms with them, and because he was running on this xenophobic platform, there was really no difficulty about it. What was difficult was when he was trying to sell his cause in the West, and he managed to, partly because he had a very good lobby, very effective and much more effective than the Serbian lobby, and partly because he covered up his intentions.
Tuđman often embarrassed his most important supporters, such as German Chancellor Helmut Kohl. For instance, Tuđman had written a book minimizing the crimes of the Ustashi and claiming that the Holocaust was greatly exaggerated. "Thank God my wife is neither a Serb nor a Jew," he told one interviewer. For the national flag, Tuđman chose a replica of the checkerboard emblem that flew over the Croatian death camps of World War II, where Serbs, Jews, and Gypsies were exterminated. Tuđman's anti-Semitic views were covered beneath rhetoric acceptable to the West. With the help of Reuter and Finn, a high-powered American public relations firm, the New York Times found space for General Tuđman's new and misleading image on its opinion page. In the article, Tuđman promised that there would be no purges against the Serbian population in Croatia if it separated from Yugoslavia.
Tuđman declared that Croatia was for the Croats. That was his slogan, a racialist slogan. Croatia for the Croats, with the implication people who weren't Croats, and there was a very substantial Serb and Yugoslav mixed variety, didn't feel that they were in fact second-class citizens, and he recognized them as such.
A full 6 months before fighting broke out, Serbs were purged from positions in government, news organizations, and the police. Their homes were dynamited in cities such as Zagreb, Zadar, and Dubrovnik. For the first time since World War II, Serbs in eastern Croatia began to flee across the Danube River.
Serbs working in Croatian cities were required to sign loyalty oaths. Those who did not sign were fired. Those who did sign were fired later. Serb homes, apartments, and businesses were attacked.